Inside the crippling one-party regime of Nairobi in mid-1991, Raila Odinga, the fiery son of Kenya's first Vice President Jaramogi Odinga, found himself at the epicenter of a political maelstrom. Released from his third stint in detention just months earlier in June, after enduring nearly a decade behind bars under President Daniel Arap Moi's iron-fisted regime, Raila had emerged as a relentless advocate for multi-party democracy. His involvement with the nascent Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, FORD, had made him a thorn in the side of the ruling Kenya African National Union, KANU. But as tensions escalated toward a pivotal rally at Kamukunji grounds on October 5th, the air grew thick with peril. It started with whispers of danger, but soon they solidified into concrete warnings. Alan Eastham, a political officer at the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi, pulled Raila aside in a clandestine meeting. "The government is panicking," Eastham confided, his voice laced with urgency. "They're blaming you for the unrest sweeping the nation. Intelligence suggests they're planning something more than an arrest this time. You've been detained before and come out fighting. They know detention won't break you anymore. They might harm you physically or, worse, assassinate you." Raila's heart pounded as the words sank in. This wasn't mere paranoia. KANU regime had a history of eliminating dissenters. Just a year prior, Foreign Affairs Minister Robert Oko had been brutally murdered in a case shrouded in mystery, his charred body discovered in a remote field. Other critics, such as Bishop Alexander Moge and politician Masinde Muliro, had met suspicious ends. Raila knew he could be next. The decision to go underground was swift and fraught with emotion. Raila confided in his closest allies, the Young Turks of FORD, including lawyers James Orengo, Anyang Nyong'o, Mukisa Kitui, Paul Muate, Martha Karua, Kiraita Mirungi, and others. That fateful day, as police stormed his offices at a Jeep house in downtown Nairobi, Raila was safely ensconced in Orengo's office on a higher floor. The raid was chaotic. Officers ransacked desks and demanded his whereabouts. But the presence of media and lawyers, including Karua, Japheth Shamala, and Martha Koome, thwarted their efforts. Raila watched from afar, his pulse racing, knowing this was only the beginning. That night, he sought refuge at Orengo's home, but paranoia set in. "It's too obvious," Orengo muttered as they huddled in the dim light. Nyong'o volunteered to drive Raila to Kitui's house under the cover of darkness. As they sped through Nairobi's shadowy streets, Raila glanced back repeatedly, half expecting the glare of police headlights. At Kitui's modest home, he spent a tense week in hiding, the walls closing in as reports filtered in of intensified searches. Meanwhile, back at his own Kileleshwa residence, the nightmare unfolded for his family. In the dead of night, 17 armed officers surrounded the house, pounding on the door. Ida Odinga, Raila's steadfast wife, barred their entry, feigning a search for keys while alerting the press. The watchman, brave but terrified, counted the intruders aloud, earning a brutal beating. The police left with a chilling message: "Tell Raila to report to the station if he's man enough." Ida's voice trembled as she later recounted the ordeal to journalists, her eyes welling with tears. "Our children are living in fear. The phone rings and they freeze. One of my daughters broke down in class today. Death threats had become routine, anonymous calls promising fire or that Raila would never see the sun again. Feces smeared in their backyard, his car vandalized by hired thugs. It was psychological warfare designed to break them." Raila's hiding spots shifted like sand in the wind. From Kitui's, he moved to Nyong'o, then to the less conspicuous home of Jalango Enyango in upscale Loresho. Each relocation was a heart-wrenching goodbye, laced with the uncertainty of capture. During one brief respite, Raila slipped into his sister-in-law's house to see his children. Kneeling before them, he hugged them tightly, their small bodies shaking with sobs. "I promise you, I'll never go back to detention," he whispered, his voice cracking. It was a vow born of desperation, one that would propel him toward exile. Ida, ever the pillar, issued a defiant press statement. "If anything happens to my husband, the police will be held responsible." She detailed the harassment, from surveillance vans lurking outside to a bizarre summons to Central Police Station that no officer there acknowledged. Jaramogi, Raila's aging father, added his voice, decrying the Gestapo behavior of Moi Special Branch in a public appeal that served as a clever diversion. As the noose tightened, salvation came from an unlikely quarter, the Catholic Church. Archbishop Zashos Okot, a quiet but resolute figure, orchestrated the next phase. "We cannot stand by while a man's life is at stake," he reportedly said. Father Mark Opio, also known as Father Mac Opio, a Kenyan priest, and Sister Diane, a white American nun, were enlisted for the daring extraction. They arrived at Raila's hideout under the guise of a pastoral visit. In a hurried transformation, they shaved his head clean, fitted him with thick glasses, and draped him in priestly robes complete with a white collar. "You are now Father Augustine from Machakos," Father Opio instructed, his eyes steady despite the risk. Raila stared at his reflection, barely recognizing the man gazing back. A humble cleric, not the revolutionary firebrand. The disguise was perfect, blending piety with anonymity. With Raila in the back seat, poring over newspapers to appear engrossed, the trio set off from Nairobi. Police roadblocks dotted the highways, officers scrutinizing vehicles for the fugitive. Each stop was a test of nerves. "Where are you headed, Father?" one asked. "To Kisumu for mission work," Sister Diane replied calmly, her American accent adding an air of untouchability. Raila's hands clenched beneath his robes, sweat beading on his forehead, but the disguise held. They passed unchallenged, the sacred attire a shield against suspicion. As Nairobi faded in the rearview, Raila felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Leaving behind his family, his fight, perhaps forever. The journey to Kisumu was long, the road bumpy, but the conversation flowed with shared stories of resistance, forging an unbreakable bond. Upon arrival at the Catholic mission in Kisumu, Raila was introduced as Father Augustine, booking a room under that name. Locals milled about, none the wiser, even as whispers of his manhunt echoed in the air. But safety was fleeting. They pressed on to Rangala Mission in Uganda, where Raila spent a restless night, praying not just for deliverance but for his loved one's protection. Midnight brought Jaramogi's emissary, a car to whisk Raila to Bondo, his ancestral homeland. The drive was silent, the weight of impending separation heavy. At Sarongo Beach, or Olego Beach, as some accounts recall, the lake's dark waters lapped ominously. Here, the land escape ended, and the perilous water crossing began. Robert Njura, a young Form 3 student from Makunda Secondary School in Budalangi, awaited with a simple canoe. Barely 17, Njura's steady hands on the paddle would become legendary. "I'll get you across," he assured Raila, his youthful voice belying the gravity. As they pushed off into Lake Victoria's inky expanse, Raila glanced back at Kenya's shore, tears stinging his eyes. The night was moonlit but treacherous, waves rocking the frail vessel. For hours, Njura paddled relentlessly, navigating by stars toward Ndende Island. Exhaustion gnawed at him, but fear fueled their resolve. "If we're caught, it's over," Raila thought, the assassination plot looming like a specter. Reaching Ndende Island at dawn, Raila and Njura encountered a group of Ugandan businessmen ferrying timber, sugar, mattresses, and clothes across the lake. Sympathetic to the Kenyan dissident's plight, they welcomed him aboard their larger motorboat, hiding him among the cargo. "You're safe with us?" one whispered, handing over forged documents to bolster his cover. The engine roared to life, propelling them toward Ugandan waters. But Lake Victoria, Africa's largest freshwater body, was no gentle passage. A sudden storm whipped up, winds howling as rain pelted down. Waves crashed over the sides, soaking everyone. Raila's companion, the boat driver's wife, shivered uncontrollably from illness. In a moment of quiet heroism, Raila lent her his jacket, warming himself with sips of vodka from a flask provided by a friend. "We're in this together," he murmured, the shared hardship deepening the emotional tether. After hours of battling the elements, the boat docked at Sigulu Island, one of the territories annexed by Uganda's former dictator, Idi Amin, from Kenya. Here, amid a community of mixed Kenyan, Ugandan, and Tanzanian heritage, Raila found temporary sanctuary. Sympathizers helped refine his false identity. Joseph Ajua Odero became his new name, complete with Ugandan tax certificates called Emi Solo. But danger lurked. Kenyan agents had infiltrated Uganda, scouring for the fugitive. From Sigulu, Raila boarded a taxi to Jinja, crossing the Owen Falls Bridge where a roadblock awaited. Heart in his throat, he presented his papers. The guard scrutinized them, then waved him through. A narrow escape that left him breathless. In Jinja, another taxi ferried him to Kampala, Uganda's bustling capital. There, Shem Kanga, a longtime friend who had once worked for Raila's company East African Spectre, provided shelter. Kanga contacted the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, alerting them to Raila's arrival. "Kenya knows you're here," a UNHCR official warned. "Their security forces are hunting you, but Uganda won't hand you over." Raila went deeper underground, the paranoia intensifying. Reports of Kenyan spies in Kampala fueled sleepless nights. Germany, the US, and Britain declined asylum, fearing diplomatic fallout with Moi. But Norway, having severed ties with Kenya over human rights abuses, stepped in. Asylum was granted, along with a job and passport, but first, Raila had to reach Entebbe Airport undetected. Enter the second disguise. UNHCR Representative Ahmed Sayed Farah orchestrated it. Raila donned a flowing kanzu, a fez hat, and a jacket, transforming into Alhaj Omar, a devout Muslim en route to Mecca for pilgrimage. The irony was poignant, entering Uganda as a Catholic priest, leaving as a Muslim Haji. At Entebbe, he boarded a Sabina Airlines flight, blending seamlessly among passengers. A friend from Nairobi, also on the plane, passed him without recognition. As the aircraft lifted off, Raila gazed out at the receding African landscape, a torrent of emotions surging. Relief at survival, grief for the life abandoned, anger at the tyranny that forced it. Touching down in Oslo, Norway, Raila was met by his sisters, who scanned the arrivals in vain until he approached. "It's me," he said softly, removing the fez. Their embrace was tearful, a reunion laced with the pain of displacement. Norway welcomed him with open arms, political asylum, employment, and a passport granting global travel except to Kenya. For the months until his return in 1992, Raila rebuilt his life in the frigid north, advocating from afar for Kenya's democratization. But the escape scars lingered. In 2020, Raila publicly honored Robert Njura on Facebook, crediting his steady hands on the boat for saving his life. Their emotional reunion years later brought tears, a testament to the human bonds forged in crisis. Back in Kenya, Ida's resilience shone. Sacked from teaching for challenging Raila's detentions, she had been reinstated amid international outcry. Her 1991 appeal to the Attorney General highlighted the family's torment, pleading for an end to the unspecified persecution. Jaramogia's diversions had bought precious time. The escape wasn't just Raila's. It was a collective triumph of allies, clergy, and strangers risking all for justice. This daring smuggling, from Nairobi's hideouts, through priestly disguises and stormy lake crossings, to Uganda's shadows and a pilgrim's flight, averted assassination, preserving a leader who would later serve as Kenya's prime minister. It stands as a gripping saga of defiance, where cunning outwitted cruelty and hope pierced the darkness.